Welcome to the Refuge, a Circ podcast to share our research with practitioners and communities. I'm your host, Israel. I'm a guest today, Fawziah Alkmaki, a PhD candidate in Otolabat Family School of Nursing at Western University. Fawziah's primary research interest is in the area of health and social equalities in disadvantaged populations. I also have Mahmoud Sayed, originally from Afghanistan, grew up in the Middle East. He came to Canada in 2015. He has been working with the youth outreach team for 5 years at the YMCA Centre for Immigrant Programs. Sayed is currently working towards a Bachelor of Arts in Dalhousie University, plans to switch his major to an X-ray technician. Finally, we have Abdul Alsaidan, the Child and Youth Settlement Manager at the YMCA Centre for Immigrant Programs and has worked in the settlement sector for several years. Raised in the Middle East, US, and Australia, Abdul sees settlement from various perspectives and believes there's not a one size fit all approach to successful newcomer programs. Today, I just want to talk about youth and their involvement in the community. Do you want to start with you, Abdul? Share your experience of youth working in communities.
Certainly. Thank you very much for the invite. So, including youth in all types of programming that is tailored for them is very essential. Making sure that youth feel included academically, ensuring that youth have extracurricular activities they can partake in. In essence, youth are our future. So having programs that are tailor made for them for each demographic is essential to their development, essential to their academic success, essential to their integration into the community. It is the bedrock of their development.
And Syed, what's your experience with that?
My experience is I was a youth by myself. So when I started coming in, I was a youth participating in the youth outreach program, and I really felt comfortable through doing that. And when I become a staff finally with them, I knew why did I feel comfortable because I see them. We put youth in the top of our list. They plan everything. For example, if we have a leadership, they come with an idea, the topic that we're gonna tackle, how we're gonna tackle it, when and where, and for who. And that shows that the youth will come. The most important thing is the youth to feel comfortable and they decide what they will have to do.
Mm, mm. I'm Fazia.
So, talking about my experience in working with refugee youth, and particularly from a research point of view, is that I personally enjoyed it a lot. And the fact that youth were very open and happy to share their experiences with us. And as you know, settlement experience is a difficult one. And so to have someone openly share what they go through and experience different of difficult and complex feelings is not an easy thing. And imagine that is happening with or coming from people who are just still starting their life, their youth, they're young, and so I very much appreciate that one thing, and the other thing is that the amount of how they become open and happy to share these kind of experiences just allow us to both come together and create knowledge in terms of how refugee youth settlement experience is going or happening in different countries.
Mm, mm. You know, the three of you have mentioned something that just stand out in your responses, and that's how important it is to have the youth involved. I guess in the creation or the planning of whether it's the research or the programming. Now, just start with you again, Fazia. Why is that important?
I think having youth engaged in research project or community project in general is a very critical point to consider when planning programs or research project, because first they would be able to share their own experiences, and that will allow them to have a voice, because again everyone can talk about whatever experience in this life, right? But
Mm,
those people who are living that experience and going through that circumstances or specific such circumstances will always give you the genuine reality. And the other thing is that because we are talking about youth experience in moving from a country to another, so it's basically their story, so they own it. So
mm,
this is something that we try our best in designing research project, is to find way to consider how youth can implement their own ways of creating knowledge in research. So for example, we try our best to create a safe space, a big space enough for youth to design the way that we want to go about the research itself. So at the end,
mm,
they will have a voice by speaking about their own experience, and um, they will own it, and will make sure that our conclusion will exactly describe how they go about their experience.
mm, mm, mm. Abdul, do you want to add to that?
Certainly. Involving youth in programming or having programs, whether it's academic support, whether it's support in youth programs, leadership programs, getting them involved and getting their feedback is essential, because if you're designing a program and you're not in touch with the youth, the certain demographic in that youth that you're trying to target, that program most likely will not be successful. So
Mm,
you have to be able to engage with youth. At the end of the day, you're dealing with people. People have emotions, people react to things, people have certain needs.
mm,
And how do you identify these needs? Is by building a relationship with the youth, then coming back to the drawing board, engaging them in the designing and implementation of these programs. And these programs will be successful as long as you maintain that bridge with the youth. There's no point designing a program if youth did not ask for it,
mm,
because it's not what they're looking for.
mm, mm. So, could you share any experience you had or an example of being involved in the creation of a program? For
Of course, so uh, being the youth that doing the programming or being participating in the programming, it's an important thing for the youth to feel comfortable doing that thing. If the youth didn't want to do that, or we just forced them to do that, they're not gonna feel comfortable. They're not gonna do the effort they would do if they made their own programming or their own topic they want to do.
mm,
For me, when I was a youth, I always had the chance to choose between few topics or to come up with my own topic to talk about, which has made me feel more comfortable because I already have experience with this topic. I've been through that. I've seen through that. I can talk about it. But when you have other topics that I really don't know anything about, I will not feel comfortable as much as the topic that I know. And the same thing for me now as a staff. I always try to make the youth choose the topic they want. I want to see the topic that they're most lively about, the most they want to talk about. So that's the topic we choose always. Yeah.
mm. You know, we're mentioning this, and I'm thinking, growing up, there are some things or experiences I'll go through that I have difficulties sharing. What are some ways, Abdul, that you found in making, I guess, making it easier for the you to share, especially if they've had traumatic experiences before they move to Canada?
That's a excellent question. An excellent question. In our experiences, you first have to get to know the youth. You have to develop a relationship with them. You have to listen to them, and over and above everything, not judge and not speed up the process and how they want to open up. So you have to connect with them, and then they will tell you what they're going through if they feel comfortable. That may take 1 week, that may take 1 month, that may take 6 months. But if you can develop that relationship of trust, that relationship of professionalism within the youth programs, you can connect with the youth, and then they begin to open up. They begin to tell you their problems. They begin to tell you their obstacles, what's working, what's not working. And the reason why I really related to your question is when I look back at my childhood, the educators and the youth workers that still resonate with me today, 45 years later, are the ones that actually listened to me, that sat down and said, how are you feeling? What's going on? And that genuinely cared.
Mm. Mm. Fawzia?
So, working in academia and conducting research doesn't give us always the luxury that community partners usually have with youth in terms of time. So it will allow them to
Mm.
build and create, a deeper relationship with them. But unfortunately, specifically when you're running a research project for 4 months, then you only have these 4 months to build that strong connection, if you want, with your participants. And so
Mm.
with in the latest project that we conducted with the refugee youth, although we have a short time to connect with them, but the positive thing is that we had a month before starting any data collection activity is to prepare a specific group of youth on how to do data collection for us and how to
Mm.
mentor their friends, their peers, because we understand that us coming into the project as a researcher and trying to build this rapid relationship with them in a month wouldn't give the same impact if their peer themselves would be trained enough to do that for us. So we trained seven co-researchers. They are refugee youth from the same community, and explained
Mm.
almost all the research part for them, and then the practical part. And so they have played a role in the middle between us, the academia, and the target population, the youth. And I think that was an excellent approach to go about, because then the feedback that we got was really powerful.
Mm. Mm. Do you have anything to add to that, Sai?
As a staff, I mean, our most important thing is to have the youth feel comfortable around us, and if they not feeling comfortable, they're not going to share their experience, and they will stay closed up. So the major thing we can do is have the youth make friends in the program. Like, for example, if we're going to play any kind of sports, if there's anyone speak their languages, or if not, we can make friends, have friends with them that will make them feel more comfortable, open up to the staff and to the other youth, for sure. Yeah.
Mm. What what are some other barriers you noticed apart from language, and what ways did you overcome that or work with that?
Sure. So the good thing is that we, in planning on how to do this research, I myself speak Arabic. It's my first language. So that was helpful in, doing research with Arabic speaking refugee youth. This is one thing. But the other thing is that the thing that we have been hearing from our refugee youth is that language was one barrier for them to integrate in Canada. But that was happening for a little bit of time. So when they arrived for the first year, that was a problem. That was a problem to make friends. That was a problem to understand the school system. That was a problem for them to understand, specifically for those youth who were in the beginning of the high school. So it was difficult for them to comprehend the school system, to understand what courses they need to have in order to apply for a specific major in university. And that was a setback for them, especially when they are the oldest siblings in the family, so no guidance they have before. And so, but then in general, they have this difficulty for 1 year. But once they start to unlock the English language, um, they start to achieve a level of integration. But that will take them to another level of understanding the discourse around them in school and community. So they will be more exposure to racism and discrimination, since they start to understand what is going on. And so this is one thing, positive and negative, about achieving a certain level of in mastering the language.
Fazia, thanks for sharing that. And I'm wondering, on your end, Abdul, apart from language barriers, or I guess, what are some examples of language barriers you've seen, and how did you tackle that?
Working with schools when you have a new student that comes from overseas, whether they're a newcomer youth or a refugee youth, and they're not understanding what's going on because obviously the language barrier.
Mm.
And then when I speak to our partners and the organizations that we collaborate with, I try to kind of just give the example of how you would feel as a provider, as a youth worker, if you were in a country that you did not speak the language.
Mm.
How would you go about how would you go about your daily business up until you learn the language, assuming that no one spoke English or French or what have you. So language and not being able to communicate with your fellow kids in school is very challenging. It increases isolation. It makes things adjusting for them more difficult. So that's why we encourage during youth programming, yes, speak your own language if you have someone that speaks your own language, but also be aware that other people may not know what you're trying to speak. So if one person speaks English, maybe have that person repeat what is being said to another youth in the program to be inclusive. But speaking your own language while you're learning one of the official languages of Canada is not a bad thing. You have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to relate to other people. And language is the the way that people do that.
Mm. Mm. Fazia, do you have something to add to that?
I think there is one a positive aspect to language difficulties for youth, is that after some time, when they start to speak the language and to comprehend a lot of um, conversations around them, is that they become the translators for their families. So
Ah.
it's not only that they will be using the language for their own progress in school and community and making friends and just to prosper alone, but they will also be helping their younger siblings in school, because of the
Mm.
language ability that they start to develop. They will be joining their parents if they are having appointments or something else outside, and the parents will usually depend on them, and this is become it becomes an asset for the family. So at the beginning it's a little bit difficult for them for 6 months, a year, and then they just explode in terms of using the language.
Mm. Mm. Sai, do you see any other benefits of having youths involved in working with communities or programs like at the YMCA?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of benefits joining the program, and one of them, as we talking about the language, of course, and having someone that doesn't speak the language, or any of the youth or the staff doesn't speak his language or her language or their language, it makes it really challenging for us to communicate or like to have communication with them or to have anything planned with them, but it's a great thing for them to come and join us, because when they be doing that, we have a lot of lovely youth around us, and they will try to speak English with them. Even if they don't understand, they will pop up the Google translation, they will translate some few words, and with the time they become best friends and they talk. We actually had a few youth that happened to them like that, and now they are friends, and both of them now started from zero. They couldn't speak any English together, and they didn't have the common language either. So all they did is hand signed for like the rest of 6 months, 7 months. After that, they start learning more English, start talking a little bit. Now I look at them and I'm really proud of them. You know.
Wow, that's a wonderful story. Abdul, do you have any benefits you've noticed in the youths for themselves by participating in any of the programs?
Absolutely. I mean, youth need a lot of support in schools. Youth need support in employment. Um, these youth-led programs act as a safety net, and us as service providers and working with newcomer youth, we have to be able to relate to them, to have programs that are suited for them, that have added value to their integration process. And one thing I just kind of like to touch on is the systemic barriers or obstacles that they may face in the system. We have to advocate for them.
Mm.
It's okay to disagree with another service provider and say, no, listen, I know this youth. I've been working with this youth. This youth has said their issue is ABC. Explain the youth, because sometimes the youth, especially when it comes to cultural competencies with other organizations um, or them accessing services, you have to be able to advocate for them.
Mm.
And you can advocate for them most effectively and most efficiently is when you know their needs.
Mm.
And when you know the youth and what they're looking for, that's how you identify their needs.
To round up this conversation, I'm going to let you, if there's anything else you want to add, I'll start with you, Saeed.
Uh, I think we talked about the most important points, and of course, one of the most common thing is I'll say that a lot of youth will experience different kind of discrimination in their school, outside their school, the sport team because of the language they don't speak, or even some mental illness, whatever. And of course, that will affect the youth really bad. So I say every youth are smart, even though they don't speak the language. Every youth have
Mm.
the ability to do what every other kid can do, but they didn't have the experience the kid had. So a lot of the youth that came from over the sea because of civil war or the thing have experienced war, or even any civil war, losing family members, being stopped from education for years, going to different country, and of course that affects the youth. I just want to say that the youth are like the youth are forced to grow up quicker than the youth are in Canada who grew up here. So you might feel the youth are more mature or more responsible, but that's a normal thing. It will take some time for them to get back to what their age is, but they need the support to
Mm.
do that. Yeah.
Mm. Uh, Fazia?
Um, yeah, sure. So I think I have just 2 points here to mention quickly. Is the first one the collaboration with a community partner that we have extremely benefits from, because they work as a window to connect us with refugee youth. And the second thing is just that the idea or the point that Abdul brought up is the institutional barriers. So part of that is also the systematic barriers, where youth find themselves in a situation where they feel like they are responsible for their family situations. So no matter how much they progress in terms of language and community engagement, doing good in school, there is still this feelings of having the responsibility and carrying the responsibility of helping their family. If their families are in a situation where they are financially broken, I promise you, they will take it on their own, and that may hinder them and bring them back, or hold them back from progressing well in school, and so on. So yeah, I mean, institutional barriers and systematic barrier are two things that are related to each other, and they usually affect the progress of youth in terms of integration in a new country.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. And Abdul, anything you'd love to add?
Yes, absolutely. I really do believe that when dealing with refugee youth, when dealing with newcomer youth, there is each youth is individual. They're all individual people. They have their own circumstances, and not to group youth together and to assist youth individually, get to know them. So, in the academic system, you may have two youth who are refugees. One may excel in one area, one may struggle in one area, and then you have all these barriers that they have to overcome. But just to um, each youth is different. They have their own set of needs, and I really do believe that once you get to know the youth, get to know your target, your demographic, you can help them navigate through things better. Because in my experiences, I've dealt with youth that have they faced discrimination. They're still processing what that is. They still are not mature enough to know what's going on, but their instinct is telling them, I'm being treated differently. I'm being looked at differently. And as a service provider, you have to support that youth. And if need be, speak to whoever they're facing that issue with and say, no, listen, this is the way it is. Um, so I really can't stress enough how, when it comes to community work, getting to um, assist youth, you have to know your demographic. You have to invest in the community, and that investment comes in time.
Mm.
Reaching out to them, having them at the center, getting to know them, getting to know their issues. Because without that, you won't be able to successfully help them navigate through things. Being a teenager or being a youth is hard in of itself,
Mm.
much less if you're a newcomer, refugee, new language. Um, the obstacles are many.
Wow. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation and for the great work you do with the youths in the community. And also, thank you for coming to the Refuge today.
Thank you very much for the invite. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you and have a good day.